here. We are live on YouTube. This is the Complete Man Podcast, episode number 15. And we're live in 3, 2. All right, welcome back to the Complete Man Podcast with your host, Purdeep Sangha, the Complete Man himself. And today we're going to be talking about becoming even more of a complete man. I'm going to tease it with that and hand it over to Purdeep. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well, Nathan, man. I'm super excited again about this episode. Last week we talked to Al here, who is the male enhancement coach for many men out there, and we touched on a topic I think that is very important to men, near and dear to men, and I think one of the most challenging things in men's lives as well. So we're going to be talking about, we're going to go all over the place here. We're going to be talking about sex life. We're going to be talking about confidence. We're going to be talking about male enhancement, what that looks like. So Al, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me back.
So I want to get into more of the technical stuff here, the more practical stuff, because I think we touched on a lot of things, but I know the audience is probably wondering, okay, we've talked about male enhancement. What does that mean, really? So can you maybe just give a breakdown when you say male enhancement from a physiological perspective, and then maybe we can get into the psychological after, but the physiological perspective, what does male enhancement look like?
Sure. I think when we're talking about that, most men are thinking about enlargement. That's a big part of it. With enlargement, you are, a few things are happening. You are stretching the suspensory ligament. If you've ever studied how they perform enlargement surgeries, that's the ligament they sever. They sever that ligament and it kind of free floats. What we're doing though is we're stretching it. We're not severing. So you still maintain full functionality. We're also expanding the tunica. The tunica is like a flexible mesh that contains the penis. It governs the expansion of the penis. So you're doing that with various exercises, and of course, one of the biggest factors in achieving all of this is to raise your erection quality. That's part and parcel of the program. You're not going to have very good results if you're not trying to get your erection quality as high as you can get it. It's some guys try to shortcut the process and just focus on the pure size stuff. If you're not focusing on erection quality, you're going to have issues making gains.
Yeah, I guess it doesn't make sense to have a big member, as some people call it, without it having a proper quality, I guess, and hardness. And I can be open with this because you've been working with me, Al, and it seems that when you started talking about the physiological aspect, I was so intrigued and amazed because I was used to, and I started doing things like Kegels and other exercises at an earlier age based on old, you can say, Indian traditions, right? A lot of this stuff has come from Eastern culture, but I wasn't aware of the actual physiological, biological aspects, such as you were talking about the tissue, how it's actually structured, the ligament. Like there's this whole science behind this, which I believe is really cool and actually legitimizes this stuff that you're doing rather than seeing those ads like we talked about last time on the internet that have these pumps or magic pills. It's just like anything else, and I can attest to this. It's like working out, right? You have to spend time, dedication, and commitment to actually do this stuff.
Mm-hmm. I like that you mentioned the Kegel exercise because that's a fundamental part of things. Very interesting thing about this exercise is that if you look it up in the medical literature, it's a very interesting article on how the Kegel exercise has been shown to be superior to surgery in some cases where men are having issues like venous leaks. That's a condition where more blood is going out of the penis than in, and it's difficult to maintain an erection. And when you perform an erect Kegel, that changes everything. I mean, the flaccid ones are good to perform if you're looking for tone. That does have some effect on the on venous efficiency, but when you perform them with an erection, you get that hyper expansion effect. You can actually observe the penis expanding as you contract those muscles. So, I mean, you're not just getting the strengthening, you're also getting enlargement. And that's especially considering that you usually perform the Kegels after your stretches and your girth movements. So you've already primed those tissues. Those tissues have already been pre-expanded. So by the time you get to the Kegels themselves become a very effective enlargement exercise. So I mean, and if you looked at some of the routines, I don't know if you have, but you'll notice there's kind of a push pull, almost like a synergistic effect, and there's a method to that. There's a reason why those exercises are structured the way they are, because one exercise is supposed to cascade into the next one, giving you a much more effective workout, and certainly a lot better than if you were just doing one exercise on its own.
Yeah, I think that's actually valuable because just like working out, right? You were big into bodybuilding and stuff like that. The importance of doing, the opposites, for example, push pull exercises, or when you're working on your biceps, actually stretching out your triceps so you can actually get
Mhm.
a greater movement in your biceps. There's a science behind it. So I encourage everybody to take a look at the work that Al is doing, because this isn't just a quick fix. I think that's the other thing too. I think a lot of people are looking, especially in today's society, people are looking for quick fixes. So how do I pop a pill and how does it grow automatically, right? It's not one of those, what do you call them? Uh, those kids' toys where you popped in water and all of a sudden they grow and they sprout. That's not the way it works here. But you touched on something in particular. Um, the Kegels, and I call them the Kegels, and that's probably because I'm Canadian, so we pronounce a few things differently. But the importance of the pelvic floor, because this is very important for a lot of things, for both men and women. When we talk about hernias, when we talk about posture, abdominal strength, back. Can you talk about the importance of the pelvic floor when it comes to maybe erection size, erection quality?
Yeah, that's a really good point to bring up. And if you consider our modern lifestyle, where most of us are sitting most of the day in a chair, when we go to the bathroom, a modern toilet is usually situated in a way where your legs are 90 degrees or greater. We're not getting that pelvic floor flexibility. If you look at a lot of uh, cultures that live a little closer to nature, you'll notice that a lot of them, when they sit, they're not sitting on chairs. They actually relax in a deep squat position, feet flat on the floor. And even the older guys do this, older people, and uh, they're comfortable. They can sit in that position for long periods of time. The pelvic floor is open, it's flexible, it's strong. They have no problems doing that. Most people in our society, I think, if they were to try that, they would be unsuccessful. Their feet certainly wouldn't be flexible to be flush on the floor. They wouldn't be comfortable in that position. They wouldn't be flexible enough to relax in that position. So uh, when I've instructed guys to try that, it's an awakening for them to do it and to find how difficult it is and just how stiff those muscles are. The pelvic floor, if it's not flexible, you're going to have problems. Some men have actually, had erectile dysfunction due to issues with the pelvic floor. If you were to look at those muscles uh, in an anatomy chart, you see how they all weave into each other. So if there's something wrong in one area, it's gonna affect the other. So definitely pelvic floor strength and flexibility is a very important part of the process. So doing what you can. The Kegels, that stresses a specific aspect of the pelvic floor, but you want to be sure that you're doing other things, uh, to help that along. The Asian squat is an exercise that was what we were talking about, where you just sit in that relaxed position. Learn to do that, even if it's for a few minutes a day, every single day. It's one of those exercises that you can do that every day, and it becomes relaxing as opposed to stressful.
Yeah, and so thanks for that. I was just making a bunch of notes here because I think there's a whole other other things that we can cover here. I just want to touch on something that you brought up, and I think this is very important. This is kind of a side note for guys, because this is something from an anatomical perspective that I think we've taken for granted. You talked about the squat position. My family, my background heritage is Indian, and in India, they have obviously toilets have become mainstream now, but before it was just basically a hole in the wall and you squat, or hole in the ground, I should say. You squat, you take your, let's just say, crap. and away you go. And I was so confused as to why they would do that. It's like literally the squat position that you're talking about. Well, lo and behold, the latest studies actually show that is the best position to actually go poo. And it's healthier because it aligns the colon, for example, and the rectum. And so this is really, really interesting. And when I was talking to some of my trainers, for example, what I realized was I had lost the ability to be in that deep squat position. So just a tip for the people out there, for the guys out there, just to add on to what you were saying, Al, if you put yourself in that deep squat just for a couple of minutes a day, just to increase that flexibility, it actually goes a long way. It goes a long way in your hip flexors, your overall mobility, and your stability. Um, and as a father, I think this is really important. Your kids, if you notice how flexible they are, they can sit in that squat position forever. Try to encourage them to continue to do that, because if they keep that flexibility, their hip strength is going to be a lot better growing up, and their pelvic strength, as what you're talking about. So I think that's very important as fathers for us to understand. But can you also talk about the importance of working out and erection quality?
Most definitely. And I get asked this a lot. I get asked, what's the best type of training to perform, physical training to perform in conjunction with male enhancement training? And I always go back to cardiovascular training. The penis runs on blood. If you have a weak circulatory system, if your heart is weak, you're going to have problems. You're going to have problems maintaining a good erection. And even if you get proficient at achieving erections in a relaxed state, just, sitting down, exercises, it's very different than if you're, having sexual activity. I mean, imagine, you meet someone and they're physically fit, and, you start doing things, and your heart can't keep up. Your penis won't be able to keep up. So, that's a part of it. I mean, I don't tell guys you have to be a triathlete to be successful at it, but you should be doing some form of regular cardiovascular training. I mean, it's good for your health. Especially as you get older. You're it becomes less of a vanity thing and more of a health and survival strategy to maintain some regular cardiovascular activity. But the more fit you are in that area, the easier things are going to be. And of course, there is the resistance training, which I love. That's always been my first love. That's good too. I wouldn't say it's on par with the cardio in importance, but it's definitely important. It helps to optimize the metabolism, and it's also good for hormone levels. Just having a good, well-rounded physical fitness regimen is going to be very important. It also helps to relieve stress. Unless you're someone who is occupied daily with a lot of physical activity. We need to do it ourselves. It's a very interesting age we live in. That I can imagine our ancestors look at us and say, we used to, our workouts were survival, day to day things that we did to maintain survival. And here we are, we have to go out of our way to do these things. But that's where we're at. And, if we're going to be responsible to ourselves, we need to make the time to do that.
Yeah, there's a couple things that popped into my mind as you were talking. I was just inside my mind. I was laughing because I was thinking about all those movie scenes where you see guys having sex, and they pass out, or they pass away. They have a heart attack, right? Because
Yes.
the sex is so great. And I don't know the legitimacy in that. Apparently, there probably is. I'm assuming. But just having a
Yeah.
healthy cardiovascular system is important. So, sorry, you were going to say something?
No, I was going to say, I mean, and that's, the best form of stamina training, sexual stamina training, is live, vigorous sexual activity. I mean, you're with someone who's physically fit, and you yourself are physically fit. That heart rate's going to go up, and of course, at the same time, you're maintaining, or hopefully maintaining, that rock hard erection. And it's not something you can do for a sustained period of time if you're not in that kind of shape.
Yeah, really good point. So I know I've asked you a number of questions here. I'm going to throw it over to Nathan to see, Nathan, if you have any questions. You've been awfully quiet over there, man.
Uh,
So I have a weird question. I don't even know if you might have the answer to this or not, but I recently became romantically engaged with a girl, and I'm spilling our dirty details on the podcast here. The first 4 or 5 times that we had sex, I was not able to ejaculate. I went for like an hour and a half. And I don't know if it was because I just wasn't comfortable. I didn't have any problems with like performance or anything like that. But I have noticed in the past, when I do get involved with a new girl, I do sometimes have a situation where I just cannot bring myself to orgasm until maybe like the fourth or the fifth time having sex. And so I don't know if you have any insights on that and if that plays any kind of role in the stuff that we're talking about today, or maybe I just made a complete fool of myself in front of millions of people viewing the podcast.
No. I know I appreciate your honesty, and I hope our viewers do too. Well, that's what's interesting is how complex reactions can be when it comes to sex. Because when you talk about, I wouldn't put your particular concern in the category of erectile dysfunction, but that also means a lot of things, and that can mean anything from premature ejaculation to full on impotence. But it could be just the tension. The tension isn't allowing you to relax enough for you to fully enjoy the experience, and it's understandable because obviously things tend to work out after a few sessions. You're able to relax. You're not focused so much on performance, or even just, well, am I doing it right, or is she liking it, and those kind of things. And that's really when we perform our best. And I know we'll probably get into that later. But for some men that have that issue, a lot of that has to do with bad habits. A lot of men who masturbate, especially if they're masturbating to porn, they do it in a kind of a hurried, furtive manner, using a tight grip. So when they go to have sex, the feeling is very different. They're not used to that. Their penis is used to that, tight, powerful, quick stimulation, and that changes things. And it does take some time to adjust. There's exercises you can do for that. But again, if you're sexually active and you can focus on that and keep away from the other stuff, that's going to accelerate your results.
Okay, so guilty on all counts, and that was I had to stop masturbating and I had to stop watching porn, and I think that was part, and maybe just getting more comfortable with the girl. But guilty admission, you got me.
That's funny. I was just going to say we're mature men, and I'm not going to put you on the spot by asking you that question, but you just threw that out there. But that's the reality of thing. I think people, porn is considered taboo, which if you become an addict, and depending on the type of porn, I think it can be really challenging. But here's something too, and this is I guess more of a comment than a question. But Nathan, what I find is, the older I get, the more psychological sex becomes.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a point in my life where in my 20s I had broken up with my ex, and I was with her for 10 years. And 4 years after that, I would say it was almost like a rampage of meeting women and having sexual rendezvous and stuff like that. And what I noticed was, it was really interesting. The first few times I actually threw up. It was so odd, because I was just not emotionally there. I actually felt dirty because I was with one woman for such a long period of time. And after that, I noticed that I could not have, like, the performance, as you said, Nathan, was fine. It was great. But it was getting to that moment of orgasm or, ecstasy or pleasure. And those years, I realized I actually learned a big lesson, was not only the importance of sex, how we talk about sex is sacred. And it's not something to be thrown around. I know people out there will be like, wow, guys talking about this, I firmly believe in that. You have to be with the right person and to be able to enjoy it to the fullest. But the older I get, even now, what I realize is I have to be fully connected with my wife to actually fully enjoy it. Mm-hmm. If we're not on the same page, if things aren't going right in our relationship, it's not as good. We can go through the physical motions, but that emotional, you can say, pleasure is not there.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to have to cut it off because we are at the 20-minute mark, and I want to pick up this conversation. Can you come back and join us again next week?
Sure.
Okay. And we'll all be wearing the same shirts for the video podcast viewers. Where can people find out more about your work, or if they want to reach out and touch touch base with you and maybe work with you, how do people get a hold of you?
Sure. Well, I'll direct them to my link tree. Go to linktree / AJALFA. So AJ Alpha. That's the best place to get in touch with me. You can see some of the other podcasts I've done, some of my work, and then you can get a hold of me through there.
Awesome. And Purdeep, if people want to check out more episodes of the podcast, where's the best place to go?
Yeah, there's two places. One is YouTube. So you can go to youtubeformen.com or the audio at completemanpodcast.com.
Awesome. And until next time, guys, we will catch you later.
Till next time.